Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik, and this is episode number 186 of the Baseball Podcast. Thanks for riding with me, guys, here the past 2 months or so as I've been on board with GSMC as their baseball podcast hosts. I appreciate everybody who's listening. I know I mentioned it last episode 185, about the numbers in the month of April, how they increased up 11% over the month of January. So shout out to all you new listeners out there, and shout out to the listeners who are helping us share the episodes. I know I ask you guys almost every episode to let one person know about the podcast. If you can do that once a week, you do that every week, you just do the math and it multiplies very, very quickly. So continue to help us spread the word, continue to grow the podcast here. That continues to allow me to do what I love to do and bring you guys quality baseball content here twice a week within the podcast network. But episode 186 today, it's a great episode for you guys. We're going to start out with some communication around the coronavirus update, get into some Korean baseball talk. The Korean League kicked off this past week. On today's Best of the MLB segments, we got the NL West, and then we wrap up the episode talking about some simulations and some hobbies and talents of Major League ball players out there. So right off the top, not a ton of changes in regards to what the MLB is trying to do and trying to get back as soon as possible. But there was a tweet that went out by Trevor Plouffe, former Major League Baseball player, that has since gotten some legs due to some other sources within the industry. Well, I talked to my guys. I talked to my quote-unquote sources, and they did indeed confirm that his tweet was correct. So if you don't know what the tweet said, not a big deal. I'll let you know here. It said that June 10th will be Spring Training 2.0 with a target date of July 1st for opening day, and all teams in their home ballparks. And once again, I did get confirmation that has been the communication from Major League Baseball. As of right now, they are hoping that after another 30 days or so, getting into June 10th, and then almost 3 weeks from there, we'll be able to play in everybody's home ballparks. Now, they don't believe there will be fans in the stands, but that is still the idea, to get everybody back into their parks and try to play as normal of a schedule as possible. Well, another word I got from my sources was, there's no way this is going to happen. So they basically said, yeah, it's true, that's what we're getting. And then follow up, my opinion, no shot this takes place at the dates that they're looking at. And that reflects my attitude on it from last episode, going, how are they even predicting this? How can they even think that this is a possibility? And, you know, we're going to talk about the Korean League in the second segment, but you just look at that as kind of an example. Well, Korea is nowhere near the size of the United States. It's almost the size of one specific state. So if you say, hey, well, that's a model, that's not going to be a model for the entirety of Major League Baseball. They would be a model for the Florida, Arizona, Texas plan, because Korea is smaller than Florida, if what I Googled was correct. So it shows you, okay, maybe it can be done where they're playing ball in only one state. But if you have all teams in their home ballparks, the travel is just going to be outrageous. Unless, and they haven't said anything about this, and I didn't ask my guys, maybe I'll follow up with them, but unless they're rearranging all of the divisions and completely scrapping National League and American League, because here in the Northeast, the NL East alone has the Atlanta Braves and the Miami Marlins. So, yes, the Mets, Phillies, and Nationals are relatively close, but each one of those teams would have to hop on an airplane to get to Atlanta. They would have to hop on an airplane to get to Miami. So if you're just doing your divisions, you're not eliminating nearly enough travel if that's the case. Now, if they're going to have to reorganize and restructure everybody, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. You know, if you put the Yankees, the Mets, the Phillies, the Red Sox, and I don't know, the Nationals, maybe the five, the Metropolitans in the Northeast, and you continue kind of down that way because, again, there's no shot these teams are going to be able to fly from Philadelphia to Miami for, I don't know, 3 games. Heck, if they want to go 6 games, do double series, double sets type of thing, it's still too much travel for this to be the plan. And then for them to anticipate having fans in the stands by the end of the year, I know the Miami Dolphins kind of laid the groundwork or throwing out feelers here to the general public about their thoughts for having fans in the stands, but essentially it's like no more than 15,000. So in a baseball stadium, that equation is kind of more than like 10,000. You know, one person every 6 seats, alternating rows. You would have specific times and entrances that you could use to get into the stadium. And if you miss those times, you're not allowed in. And then exiting the stadium, it would almost kind of be a military style where this section followed by this section, followed by this section. So it can't be a surprise, I guess, if they're letting you know now. But I just worry that after 6 to 10, 12 adult beverages that either myself or somebody else of the age would be consuming at one of these events, there's too much gray area there of, hey, I got to use the restroom. Well, you can't. Yeah, all of a sudden we're fighting. I don't know. It seems far too complicated to try to fill the stadium to 25% capacity by sitting every 10 seats, every 2 rows, whatever it's going to be. So a Major League Baseball, in my eyes, is definitely getting a little bit ambitious with the target here of getting everybody into their home stadiums. I still feel that the 3-state plan of Florida, Texas, and Arizona is the most, probably the quickest way they could get back. That's really what we're talking about here is how do we get on the field as quick as possible? And with the NBA starting to have conversations about letting their teams back into the workout facilities starting in a couple of weeks, I believe it was May 15th is the target date on a Friday for a few different ball clubs. And then the following week thereafter, based on local government and maintaining compliance with the scientists and everybody like that, baseball is going to try to follow suit as quick as possible, which certainly makes sense because, again, getting your sport playing first here and doing it correctly could mean big bucks for your sport overall, being the first and only potential sport on television as, the NBA, NHL, they try to come back. The NFL starts flirting back in September, October. If you're still playing baseball into November, now you're competing with the NFL at that point, and it just gets watered down as opposed to right now where there's no sports being played. There's Korean baseball being played. And again, we'll get into that the next segment a little bit more, kind of giving you guys a preview on what to watch. But in regards to Major League Baseball, the latest plan, Trevor Plouffe, it is confirmed. Right now they're shooting for June 10th to be Spring Training 2.0 with July 1st, opening day, and as many teams as possible in their home ballparks. I just don't see it happening. My sources within the league don't see it happening. There's just too much going on all across the country. Yes, in the big metropolitan areas that were really driving the numbers, the curve is coming down and they're starting to get on top of this coronavirus. But the numbers as a whole across the country are continuing to increase. And as states begin to reopen, it's going to be very interesting to see how those numbers correspond. If there's once again a spike in the state of Georgia, the city of Atlanta, the biggest city in that state, potentially with the Braves trying to get back. We'll see if we got a spike there. Out in California, Florida, opening some of the beaches again for mental health. Whether or not people take advantage of that and disregard the social distancing, that will to be determined. But that's certainly something that the scientists, Major League Baseball, the rest of the sports are watching very closely because they are having conversations. We know there's an executive committee with Fauci, even Trump, potentially Vice President Pence. A lot of them have said they need sports back for the economy. We need it as America to kind of show we're strong, we're still together, we're playing, and just for overall morale, mental health for guys like me who, enjoy communicating about the sport and then also try to make it their living by covering it, talking about it, and just having nothing going on is certainly difficult for myself. But I appreciate you guys listening out there. I continue to try to bring you guys some content, give you up-to-date information. Like I said, my sources say, yeah, that's the communication, but they also say, no shot, it happens, and I tend to agree with them. So we're going to continue on this roller coaster ride until we do get some Major League Baseball sooner than later. But either way, within the next 6 weeks or so, I would anticipate concrete direction and or spring training 2.0 going on. But that'll wrap it up for the first segment here of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows within the network. And when we come back, we're going to dive into some Korean professional baseball, give you guys a glimpse. Hang around with us.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello and welcome back to episode number 186 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am Kevin Mahalik. I appreciate everybody tuning in today on Thursday, May 7th. We had a holiday week this week. Monday was May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day, followed by Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, and now it's downhill for the rest of the month here. But I appreciate everybody listening out there. If you haven't done so already, and I know a few of you haven't, based on the number of downloads we have and some of our interactions on social media, but head to Facebook, head to Twitter, check us out, follow us on there. I don't just want to be talking to you guys out here. I want you guys to message me. Let me know what you want to hear. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where you disagree. Let's have a conversation. Let's make this a community effort. We are one. The reason I get to do what I'm doing behind the microphone is because you guys out there are willing to listen to these episodes. So please give me some feedback. Give me some interaction on Twitter, Facebook, as well as iTunes. Go down, leave us a comment, write a question. We'll get it answered here. 5 stars reviews as well always go a long way. But this is the second segment where we're going to jump into some Korean professional baseball. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about Major League talent who's now over in this league. ESPN decided they were going to pick up a game a day here. They typically air at 5:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're up early on the East Coast, check those out. And if you're up late on the West Coast, you can check those out. So it'll be a lot of fun just to watch some live baseball. Heck, I even caught some this afternoon, East Coast time. It was a re-air of the game from 5:30 in the morning, and hey, I'm down with that. I don't have to catch it live at 5:30, just as long as I know it's being played somewhere that day. That'll do a few hours delayed. I'll take that as live for myself. But running through the teams here, you'll see that the teams are named after their sponsors, not the locations they are in. So you'll see a lot of corporations owning teams here, such as the Kia Tigers. Looking at former major leaguers, manager Matt Williams. He managed the Nationals for a few years. Heep Sop Choi, if you remember that name, for the Cubs, Dodgers, and Marlins. He's their hitting coach now. Let's see, pitcher Aaron Brooks. He played for the Royals, the Athletics, and the Orioles. Drew Gagnon played for the Mets the past couple of years. And outfielder Preston Tucker played for the Astros, Braves, and Reds. They're all now on the Kia Tigers. Moving on here, if you guys see the Samsung Lions on your screen, they have Tyler Saladino, who played for the White Sox and then the Brewers on the squad. They also have Lisa Vierto Bonilla, who played for the Texas Rangers and the Cincinnati Reds. First baseman and outfielder Darren Ruff, former Philly from 2012 to 2016, now with the Samsung Lions. All right. Next up, we got the Doosan Bears. They have pitchers Chris Flexen, who played for the Mets, Raul Antacalera, who played for the Athletics, and Jose Miguel Fernandez, who played for the Angels for 1 year. The SK Wyverns, I guess that's how we're pronouncing that one. They have first baseman outfielder Jamie Romick, who played for the Dodgers and Diamondbacks, and then pitcher Ricardo Pinto, who played for the Phillies in 2017. I remember him, and then the Rays in 2019. Moving on to the LG Twins, pitcher Casey Kelly played for the Padres, Braves, and Giants. Tyler Wilson on the squad, who pitched for the Orioles. Then we got the KT Wiz, pitcher William Cuveres for the Red Sox and Tigers. Moving down the list here, we got a couple of more squads. The Lotte Giants. Hitting coach is Julio Franco. Yeah, that Julio Franco. Man, wow, he's a hitting coach in Korea. That's kind of wild. Pitchers Adrian Sampson, pitched for the Mariners and Rangers, and Da-Ho Lee, who played for the Seattle Mariners back in 2016. Infielder Dixon Machado's on the squad. The Hanwha Eagles are the next team up. They got 3 former major leaguers. First up, Chad Bell played for the Tigers. Warwick Sappold, who played for the Tigers. They were on the same squad there. And then outfielder Jared Hoying, who played for the Texas Rangers. The NC Dinos, their only representative is Mike Wright, who played for the Orioles the past couple of years. And then the Kiwoom Heroes have 3 former major leaguers, and Jake Bringham, who played for the Braves, Eric Jockish, played for the Cubs, and then Taylor Motter played for the Rays, Mariners, and Twins. So not a ton of big names, but there are former major leaguers currently over in Korea playing for them. Aaron Altair is another name as well, former Philly. Quite a few former Phillies now over in Korea. And, the Korean Baseball League, they say that it's going to give MLB kind of a precursor or almost a target for what they are trying to accomplish. And I looked up, and Korea is almost, or how should I say this? Florida is 1.5 times the size of Korea, is the easiest way to put it. So this league is taking place inside the state of Florida, for better or worse, which, again, that makes it believable to my point from the first segment, where you could get a league that splits up into 10, 10, and 10 in 3 different states, and not 1 team or 2 team per states and still the same amount of travel. If the Korean League can pull it off, that means you can get everybody down to Florida or Arizona and pull that off as well. But for those of you out there going, Kev, I don't know anything about Korea, can you give me kind of a heads up on who's good, who's not? So if I know I'm watching, I know they're going to be any good. Well, there are 10 teams in the league, and I'll give you some power rankings, 1 through 10, based on past history, some additions they've made. Going 10 to 1 is the Hanwha Eagles. They're just not very good, even though they added MLB guy Warwick Saupold, still not going to get to the top of the league. The Kia Tigers are supposed to be down in the basement this year. They were the 2017 champions, and since then, things haven't gone great for the Kia Tigers, and this year looks to be another long year for them again. Number 8, the Lotte Giants. They added a few former Orioles and Dan Straley and Adrian Sampson, but still not at the top of the list when it comes to the talent side of things. Number 7, we have the NC Dinos. They led the entire KBO in team home runs for 2019, so very offensive oriented. So if you see the Dinos, you got some runs coming. We got the Samsung Lions. Darren Ruff has returned. He's going to give it a run here for the Lions. Let's see. SK Wyverns, number 4. Wyvern. Verns. It's just kind of crazy. So let's see. And then 1, 2, and 3 in no particular order. The Doosan Bears, they're defending champs. They lost their MVP who signed with the Milwaukee Brewers from last year. So they had a guy join the American MLB. And then we got the LG Twins, the 1-2 with former Major Leaguers Casey Kelly and Tyler Wilson will lead their pitching staff. So they should be good on the bump for the LG Twins. And then the Kiwoom Heroes should be up at the top as well. Let's see. They lost some good end talent to Japan. So that's another point I'll make on the way out of here for this segment is in the rankings of baseball worldwide. You have the major leagues at number 1. Obviously, everybody wants to be in the MLB. Then number 2, you have the Japan Professional League that's been trying to return. We've had some updates on the show here. They continue to push that back. Number 3 is the Korean Professional League, the one I just talked about in this segment. And then number 4 is the kind of Taiwan Professional League, the CPBL. That was the first one to return. So Korea is improving in overall quality of baseball. The baseball that you'll see will be kind of, they say minor leagues. I'll say AA. A little bit of AAA, go AA potentially for Korea. Then you go AAA, Japan, and then Major League Baseball is kind of the equivalent of the competition that you're seeing. So if you see a hitter, struggle in the MLB, Aaron Altair hit like 170 or something like that for an entire season and just couldn't figure it out. He goes over to Korea, pops one out of the park on the first night. For his squad moving forward. But it's not terrible baseball. Like I said, AA, minor league, it's certainly watchable now that there's nothing else going on. And one a day will be played on ESPN, as well as the weekends. They're at 5:30 in the morning Eastern time, so wherever you're listening to this, you'll be able to catch those games. But I'll keep you guys up to date on the standings, who's doing well, who's lighting it up, because, again, it is professional baseball, and it is pretty much the only one we've got right now. We got the CPBL and then the KBO, and the KBO is definitely better competition. But that wraps it up here for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. As always, we appreciate you guys listening. We're going to pause for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows within the network. And then when we come back, it's my favorite segment. You know it, 3 and 4, the best of the best. And today, we're talking about the NL West. Hang around.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It is Thursday, May 7th. If you're listening to this on the day this episode was released, I very much appreciate you guys listening. Do me a favor, scroll up or scroll down on your phone. Get down to where you can give us 5 stars and write a review. Let's see if we have any new ones this week. I don't believe we did last time I checked, but I always want to check again right when I'm recording here. You never know who throws one in. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're about to hear your name called on the show, or maybe it's nobody. Let's see here. All right, we're checking, and no new updates this week. That's okay. We'll put that as a challenge for next week, for Sunday's show that we'll release on Monday. Leave us a review between now and then, and we'll read it here on the show. But this is episode number 186. I appreciate you guys who have joined us for the last 20 or so episodes that I've been hosting. Hopefully you've enjoyed the content, as there hasn't been any real baseball to talk about. So I continue to come up with things to discuss, and based on our downloads, you guys are giving us positive feedback that you're enjoying the show. So in this third segment, talking about the best team in Major League history, we've gone through all of the divisions except for one. That leaves today for the NL West. We'll wrap up this division, and then next episode we'll start to get into some playoff conversation and ultimately crown who is the best team of all time in Major League Baseball. But in the NL West, starting out alphabetical as we do, that leads you to the Arizona Diamondbacks, who they have won a World Series championship in their organization, so that is the top team to be determined. You baseball fans already know which squad that is, but number 3 is actually 1999. The 100 wins in a regular season is the most they've had in the regular season, but unfortunately they fell in the divisional round in the playoffs that year, so they couldn't add postseason success to the best regular season in team history. Number 2 is 2007. They had 90 wins, advanced all the way to the NLCS before they fell there to the Colorado Rockies, who we'll hear from in just a minute. And then the best team in Diamondbacks history, you guys know it, the only World Series champions in Diamondbacks history, the 2001 squad with 92 wins, World Series champs, is the best Diamondbacks team with Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling, and Luis Gonzalez coming up here. We'll discuss that more next segment as we rank the best of the best. But moving on to the Colorado Rockies, their top 3 teams in history. Unfortunately, this organization has not won a World Series. They are one of 2 teams in this division to not win a World Series. So the Central was loaded with World Series champions. If you didn't check out that episode, that was the previous one where we did the Central. Go back, check it out. Loaded with talent on the top end. The West, unfortunately, not as successful, big picture-wise. The Colorado Rockies' third best team was actually a recent version, the 2018 squad. They had 91 wins before they lost in the divisional round. Last year, obviously, was downhill. This year, they seem to be tanking again, even after signing Nolan Arenado. So that's why he's upset, because he's going, man, we just won 91 games, had a really, really good team, and now everybody's gone, and we stink. What's the deal here? I'm not going to be here just for the money. I actually want to win. And who can blame him? But that's really besides the point here. Number 2009 is number 2. They had 92 wins. They also lost the LDS that year in 2009. And then the best team in Rockies history, their only World Series appearance was 2007. And it's a shame that they lost that World Series, because if you remember back to that year, I remember this because it was the Phillies making the playoffs for the first time in years and years. Well, the Rockies swept them right out of the divisional round. The Phillies came back, overtook the Mets. They were down 7 with 17 to play, ended up winning the division, going to the playoffs. We're going nuts. It's my freshman year of college. And they get swept by the Rockies. So that playoff fun lasted all of, I think, 4 days, because there was an off day in between games 2 and 3. But the Rockies then went on to sweep the NLCS, perfect 7-0 going into the World Series. The Red Sox took their time, going 7 or 6 games in every round. And the Rockies had like 2 weeks off before the World Series. And then I think they ended up getting swept or lost in 5 games. But it cost them not being able to continue to play right away, because had they played that next day, man, I think they would have beat the Red Sox that year. That was a good club in 2007. But moving over to the Dodgers, the third team here, the LA Dodgers. Obviously, they have some World Series champions to talk about, but none too recently. Post-1970, once again, is where I'm trying to keep things, so don't give me crap going all the way back to the Brooklyn Dodgers days. We're talking LA Dodgers post-1970, and their third best team was that team in 2017. 104 wins. It probably would have been their best team had they won the World Series, but we all know what happened. There were some trash cans, some cheating scandals going on, and they lost in 7 games that year. So tremendous ball club. Came up 1 game short from being the best in team history. The next 2 teams won the World Series. Number 2 is 1981, because they had a shortened season in 1981. They only won 63 games, but I have that was out of a total of 110. So that conversion rate, really not that bad, and ended up winning the World Series. But because it was a shortened season, does it count? Does it not? They may only play 100 games this summer, and people are worried about, is it real? Is it an asterisk on the World Series? Again, no, I don't think so. I have them as the second best team in club history, so I'm not holding it against them. I just can't put them number 1 because that's what's going on. So, number 1 for the Dodgers, 1988, 94 wins, World Series champions, an impressive ball club. Looking at some of the names, ranking them here for segment number 4, filing away some things mentally. I don't want to give away too much. I know I want you guys to stick around and listen to that segment too here. But this 1988 team, 94 wins, World Series champs, the best team in Dodgers history, because they were able to get it done 1 game away in 2017 from that being their best ever. Next up, the San Diego Padres, and this is guilty team number 2. Never won a World Series. San Diego has been there twice and lost twice. So them and the Colorado Rockies have yet to hoist the World Series trophy. So looking at their best squads, number 3, we have 1996. They had 91 wins, lost in the divisional round of the playoffs. But real good squad, 90-plus wins. Unfortunately, the playoffs, things didn't go their way. They got eliminated in the first round. Next up, we have the 1984 version, 92 wins, and they lost the World Series. This was one of their 2 trips to the World Series. They were about 15 years apart, and the 84 team only having 92 wins puts them as number 2. in team history, with the number one team being the 1998 San Diego Padres. 98 regular season wins. Really good regular season for San Diego in 98. Unfortunately fell in the World Series. They were able to win a game or two this time in the World Series. I think they were swept in 84. So kind of an improvement there. But a 98-win team that makes it to the World Series is a good squad. It's just a shame that the Padres have never really been able to get over that hump and lift the trophy. But this last squad, San Francisco Giants, they've won 3 World Series relatively recently, and those are the only 3 between now and 1970. So I apologize for some of you older fans listening, but these versions are going to be relatively new for the best versions ever of the San Francisco Giants. Again, another one, I know, going back in time, they're a lot different, but Barry Bonds ain't making the list, man. He couldn't get it done, didn't win the World Series. But in order here, 2014, 88 wins, World Series champs, but they won the World Series in 7 games as well, so struggled to pull it off. Number 2, the 2010 version, 92 wins, won the World Series in 5 games, so even better there than the 7. But this number 1 squad, tough to argue with these numbers, 2012, 94 wins, the most regular season wins out of the 3 teams. All 3 were World Series champs. Well, this team swept the World Series. So 2012 a sweep, 2010 and 5, 2014 and 7, and it continues like that for the regular season wins as well. But man, the Giants, just impressive run over the last 10 years here. So coming up this next segment, I'm going to rank these top teams 1 through 5. Once again, that is the 2001 Diamondbacks, the 2007 Rockies, the 1988 LA Dodgers, the 1998 San Diego Padres, and then the 2012 San Francisco Giants. So hang around with us. That wraps it up here for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am Kevin Mahalik, having fun bringing you guys some quality content once again today, talking about the best of the best in the history of Major League Baseball. I'm looking forward to ranking these guys 1 through 5 the next segment. But for now, we're going to pause for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, and then when we get back, let's have some fun. So stick around with us. I am Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Thursday, May 7th, and this is episode number 186 of the Baseball Podcast. We've had a great episode thus far. We're about halfway through. We've talked about the update for coronavirus in Major League Baseball. Some inside sources say, not so fast in regards to that. June 10th. Starting it back up. That is the plan, but they don't think it's going to happen. Next up, we talked about the Korean Baseball Professional League heading back to the field. Going to keep you guys up to date moving forward on what's going on there. And right now, we're on our best of the best segment for Major League Baseball, doing the NL West. You guys heard the 5 teams we're going to stack rank here in the last segment, but let's get into it. Without further ado, this segment can run a little bit long, but we're starting out at number 5, the 2007 Colorado Rockies. The Rockies and Padres, the 2 teams not to win the World Series. So if you guys have been listening, you know those teams are 4-5. Well, I decided that the Padres are a little bit better than the Rockies when it came to the teams that just fell short of the World Series. But in that 2007 Rockies team, Yorvit Torrealba behind the dish. They were led by Todd Helton at first base, hitting .320 with 17 and 91. Troy Tulowitzki at shortstop with 24 and 99, hitting .291. Garrett Atkins at third base. That's a name I don't remember. But he had 25 and 111, hitting .301. That's a heck of a year for Garrett down there at third base. Next up out in left field, Matt Holliday. Man, he had a good long career, a good run. He was only 27 at this time. He had 36 and 137 and hit .340. Whew, Matt Holliday, man, he could swing it. Then ended up with the Cardinals for a good amount of time. As we continue here, Willie Taveras hitting .320. Continuing down, Jamie Carroll off the bench in 108 games, providing a little bit of pop. Let's go to the mound in 2007. Jeff Francis, 17 and 9, 4.2 ERA, a lot of high ERAs, but that was Colorado. That's what playing at Coors Field's going to do. Aaron Cook, Josh Frog, Ubaldo Jimenez at age 23, up and coming. He was throwing hard back then, just finding his way. LaTroy Hotkins, Brian Fuentes closing out games for them. Manny Corpus as well in the bullpen. So a good squad who got hot. And honestly, if there wasn't a break in between the NLCS and the World Series, I think would have ran through the Red Sox. But they had to sit for like 10, 11 days or something like that, and then just couldn't find the mojo when they came back on the other side. Next up at number 4, the 1998 San Diego Padres. Oh, man, let's dive into this squad here. Wally Joyner at first base with 12 and 80, hitting .298 as we continue down here. Ken Caminetti, 29 home runs, 82 RBIs that year at age 35. Greg Vaughn, he was your man. 50 homers, 119 RBIs. Whew. Steve Finley out in center field, and then Tony Gwynn. Everybody knows Tony Gwynn, one of the best hitters ever. He had a down year. He only hit .321. It's just, man, amazing. That guy was a magician with the bat, and he even had 16 and 69 RBIs that year. So, man, let's keep going. Mark Sweeney played in 122 games off the bench, had to hit .234. Continuing down here, let's go to the mound. Kevin Brown, age 33. Kevin Brown, very underrated pitcher. A lot of kids my age, wouldn't know Kevin Brown, or if you ask them, wouldn't mention him in some of the greats who threw in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And it's a very underrated name. And here, 18 and 7, 2.38 ERA, and 250 innings. Whew. Another solid season from K. Brown. Andy Ashby went 17 and 9 in 226 innings, a 3.3 ERA. He was trailed by Joey Hamilton, Mark Langston. Trevor Hoffman was the closer at this point, 53 saves that year in 73 innings, a 1.48 ERA. That changeup, just filthy, coming at you. Brian Bowinger was the setup guy, it looks like. Donnie Wall out of the bullpen. So the 98 Padres were another good squad as well, but just unfortunate. Couldn't get it done. That leads us to the 3 World Series champions, where I'm not sure you can argue with this one. I think I got this one right. But number 3, I got the 2012 San Francisco Giants. I have them third out of the Dodgers, Diamondbacks, and Giants. They were led by Buster Posey, who was raking from the catcher position at this point. He had 24, 103, hitting .336. While catching. That's just, man, couldn't imagine that even today. That's crazy. Brandon Belt at first base. Brandon Crawford playing an excellent shortstop. Pablo Sandoval, the Panda, down there at third. Melky Cabrera, Hunter Pence out in right field. Oh, God, just a bunch of names you still remember. Man. Let's go to the mound, though. Matt Cain, 16 and 5. That's a name you forget quickly. Who was very successful out in San Francisco, is probably doing something somewhere. Very happy. He's got plenty of rings, feeling good. Madison Bumgarner, 16 and 11 that year, 3.37 ERA. He was only 22 in 2012. Just a young kid, man, still throwing 208 innings in the bigs. That's just wild. Tim Lincecum, he was 10 and 15 that year. He was starting his downward trend But Barry Zito, too, was on that squad at age 34. And Barry Zito is going to come up later in this show. Hang around for segment number 6. Spoiler alert, we'll get to it. But Barry Zito going to be involved. He was 15-8 in 184 innings. So still throwing the pill pretty good in 2020. Closer, let's see, Santiago Casilla, he had 25 saves. Sergio Romo had 14 saves. I remember Romo, slider, coming in there late as well. Clay Hensley, also had Brad Penny on that team for a little bit. So good team in 2012, and definitely the best of the Giants' 3 versions who won the World Series. But just a hair shy of these next 2 teams, honestly. And at number 2, I have the 88 Dodgers. 1988 Dodgers finishing second place runner-up. They were led by Mike Scioscia behind the dish. He was hitting .257 for him. Franklin Stubbs at first base. Steve Sachs, second baseman. Jeff Hamilton over at third. Their power came from Kirk Gibson. He had 25 homers and 76 RBIs, hit .290. John Shelby hit 10. Mike Marshall hit 20. So not a lot of the home runs for the Dodgers here on this squad. It looks like only 99 on the year for them. Just amazingly low. But just death by 1,000 paper cuts it must have been back in the day for the Dodgers. Let's see on the hill here. Oral Hershiser. Whew, man, that'll do it. So here you go. Here are your top ERAs. This is how they won it. Man, pitching. Oral Hershiser, 23-8, 2.26 ERA, 15 complete games in 267 innings. Tim Leary, 17-10, 2.91 ERA. And then Tim Belcher, 12-6, a 2.91 ERA. Then you go to the bullpen here. Jay Howell, 2.08 ERA in 50 games. Alejandro Pena, 1.91 in 60 games. Brian Holton, 1.70 in 45 games. And Jesse Orozco, 2.72 in 55 games. So tremendous bullpen ERA. Solid starting pitching. And just enough hitting to get by the New York Mets in 1988. And that's the best version of the Dodgers because they won the World Series. There's plenty of versions within the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years who are better than these teams. But just couldn't get it done. And that leaves you off the list when it comes to this particular segment here within the baseball podcast. But the number 1 team in the history of the NL West, that leaves the 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks. Let's dive in a little bit more. Mark Grace at first base. 15-78, Jay Bell at second, Tony Womack at shortstop, Matt Williams. But the guy who I mentioned, Luis Gonzalez, 57 and 142, hit .325. Now, a lot of people say that's juicing up right there for a summer, and I tend to agree with you. But it's also just amazing to think of a guy hitting 57, 142, looking like Luis Gonzalez. Man, I remember watching that year just going, dude, what's going on with this guy? Reggie Sanders out in right field. He hit 33 and 90. There were your big boppers. You had Craig Counsell off the bench, Danny Bautista off the bench hitting .302 in 100 games. And then you go to the pitching mound. You got Curt Schilling, 22 and 6, 2.98 ERA, 250 innings. Randy Johnson, 21 and 6, 2.49. ERA in 249 innings. And then don't even get me started on the playoffs because the drop-off after them was just down to Brian Anderson and an ERA at 5. So, but you went to the bullpen, you got Byung-Hyun Kim. You got 98 innings out of him and a 2.94 ERA coming from down below. Miguel Batista, 139 innings with a 3.36 ERA. Greg Swindell, Brent Prince. It's just the top-end talent of the Diamondbacks, I think, beats the top-end talent of the Dodgers team with Schilling, Johnson, Byung-Hyun Kim, and then on the offensive side, going Luis Gonzalez and Reggie Sanders to counter things out there. So, from 5-1, the 07 Rockies, 98 Padres, 2012 Giants, 88 Dodgers, and then 2001 Diamondbacks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show and enjoy that segment. The show of best team in Major League Baseball history, because that wraps up all the divisions. So if you come back on Monday's episode, we're going to talk about the NL and the AL playoffs and see ultimately where it leads us coming down the stretch, and then we'll try to figure out a best of 7 for ultimately who's going to win it. But that wraps up the fourth segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, and then when we come back, we're going to talk Stratomatic and Baseball Reference. Let's talk simulations. We'll be right back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode number 186. I appreciate everybody making it this far throughout today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed our last couple of segments talking about the best of the best team in Major League Baseball history, in particular today, talking about the NL West and the 2001 Diamondbacks. Well, this brings up our fifth segment here, where we like to discuss the simulations going on, the supercomputers, the smart guy, So the old Disney Plus with my 2-year-old, that's where that one just came from, just being home watching that. So let's do it. Let's dive into Stratomatic and Baseball Reference. Let's figure out where they still disagree, where they agree. Starting out with team standings, as we always do. AL East, New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays leading the way for Stratomatic. Same goes for Baseball Reference, although the Rays are doing much worse in Baseball Reference than they are in Stratomatic. So that is one slight disagreement. Both think the Yankees are going to be very, very good. And I can't say I disagree with the computers in this particular case. The AL Central, this is where it gets interesting. They got Kansas City now, Stratomatic, ahead of Cleveland and Minnesota a game back. But Kansas City, Cleveland, and Minnesota all doing very well, all above 500, all very much in the playoff picture. If we go over to Baseball Reference to cross-reference, those three teams are the bottom three. Or no, they got the Tigers. Okay, so they got Cleveland at the top, but they still like the White Sox, and then the Twins not far behind. They're arguing on the Royals, however. Baseball Reference doesn't think the Royals will be very good. I tend to agree with them there. The White Sox, though, second place in this one, and no longer in the basement. All right, so making a little bit of a run in Stratomatic. As we head out west to the AL West, let's see here. Houston and Oakland neck and neck, Stratomatic. Baseball Reference has Oakland at the top with Seattle right behind them, but Houston right on their heels as well. Seattle will continue to fade, so it's looking like a two-horse race in the East, Yankees and Rays. Two-horse race out west with the A's and Astros, and then the Central. A lot could go either way. Four of those teams outside of Detroit could really make an argument on paper that this could be their year. So that's where we're at when it comes to the American League. Looking quickly over to the National League East. Washington and, oh my God, Philadelphia making a run in Stratomatic. Only 3 games out of first place at 20-17. And Atlanta falling to 21-18. So that would be a disappointing start for Atlanta, but they like Washington at the top. Baseball Reference, they're on board with me, Atlanta, and then Washington, and they still have the Phillies 9 games out at 16-21. I like Atlanta and Washington at the top too. Hopefully the Phils can surprise people with Stratomatic here, but I don't think so. The NL Central, they got the Cubbies at the top, trailed by the Cardinals. Everybody else is under 500. We go over to Baseball Reference. Cardinals at the top, followed by the Reds, and then everybody else under 500. It's just, both central divisions are just wide open in regards to teams who have added players, teams who have lost players. really where you think they could end up could be completely different. It's just fascinating to kind of see the smart computers disagree just as much as the humans who are discussing it. Wrapping up here, the NL West, they got the Dodgers at the top, and then the Padres and Diamondbacks behind them. Stratomatic, that is, Baseball Reference, Dodgers at the top, Diamondbacks and Rockies. So the Dodgers are agreed upon out west, but the Diamondbacks and then the Padres, man, they just had 10-27 compared to 20-17. Just 7-game difference thus far on the San Diego Padres. Kind of fascinating. But Dodgers out west, Braves out east, Central all mixed up in the National League. A similar story to what we just told there from the American League side as well. But transitioning into some individual performances, starting out offensively, we got Mr. Lopez in Kansas City leading the league in hitting for Stratomatic at 372. 20 points up on Bogarts in Boston. Soler from Kansas City. Man, Kansas City hitting the ball. They got the top two out of the top three in batting average for the league. Followed the Cardinals' Edman, 350. Simmons in L.A., 349. Jimenez, 349. So top dog at 372, and then everybody else at 352 below them. If we compare that over here to Baseball Reference, they got Edman up here as well. Tommy Edman hitting 384, a little bit better. He's now leading the league. He's jumped Jose Peraza, who's down to 373 offensively, and then Kevin Pillar at 364. Carlos Santana over 350 as well. So we got 8 guys hitting over 350 according to Baseball Reference, and only 4 over there doing it for Stratomatic. So offensively, a little bit of an easier league for Baseball Reference. Let's continue around the league. Santana, Lowe, Machado, all at the tops for doubles. If we're talking home runs, we're looking at Trevor Story, Soler, Hiora, Harper, Lindor at the top. RBIs, Soler, Cruz, Hiora, Harper, Reyes, some of the names we read off last episode as well. Nobody's really gone on a huge power surge since we last connected when it comes to Stratomatic. If we look over here for Baseball Reference gives us the WAR as well, which is wins above replacements. For those of you out there who never understood WAR, essentially, Lindor is worth 2.7 more wins than a standard or average Major League shortstop. And he's tops of the list, followed by Rojas in Miami. And, that guy named Mike Trout out in L.A., still having a good summer. Baseball Reference, Sterling Marte leads the league in doubles out in Arizona. Cameron Mabrin in Detroit having a good one at 14, as well as Jose Iglesias. So Detroit and Baltimore make their first appearance on either list here. Talking home runs, Nolan Arenado, Mike Trout up to 13 in Baseball Reference. He's now tied with Franmil Reyes and Yohan Mercado. Jose Alvarez at the top of the list. RBIs, Alvarez still way out in front with 46. Man, he's been way out for weeks now. You can almost just skip that one and assume he's going to be right there at the top of the list when it comes to offense. Stolen bases, Malik Smith for Seattle has 21. Next up is Alberto Mondesi for Kansas City. So looking at Smith at 21. Whew, man, that's a lot. Let's see if I could find it here quickly. They got VR for Stratomatic at 13. So 21. I don't even see Smith here on Stratomatic. But wrapping it up, talking individual performance, let's talk about people on the bump. Blake Snell still leads the league for Stratomatic. His ERA has risen to .85, still under 1. Steven Strasburg's next up, followed by Clayton Kershaw and Garrett Cole. Before you get to some of the names where it's like, who's that? They're having a good summer, such as Ross, Manea, Gallen, people like that. But Snell, Strasburg, Kershaw, Cole, tops in ERA in Stratomatic. Top ERA guys, Madison Bumgarner for Baseball Reference still. It's fun to watch Madison be at the top there. Seriously, I don't know if he's going to have that many bullets. But then again, right underneath him is Dallas Keuchel. Yeah, that Dallas Keuchel who didn't sign last year, then went to Atlanta in the middle of the year, then finally gets his deal with the White Sox. I guess they think he's still going to be driven and motivated and not resting on his laurels when it comes to when he's finally getting paid here. So Rick Porcello, ERA under 2, Walker Buehler, Bryce Wilson in Atlanta. as well as Trevor Williams in Pittsburgh. So 6 guys with an ERA under 2 in Baseball Reference, and only 5 over there at Stratomatic. Looking at the top of the list here, let's look for strikeouts or saves. Ian Kennedy, Castillo, Kayla, Diaz over there for Stratomatic. Saves for Baseball Reference. We got Jansen, Smith, Hand, and Chapman. So a mix of lists there when it comes to saves in the back end of the bullpen. Certainly disagreement on who they think ultimately is going to be winning all of these games. Let's see here if we can find strikeouts. There they are. Garrett Cole, he has 79, leading Stratomatic. Blake Snell at 78, DeGrom 71, Bieber 65 are your top 4. If we go over here to Baseball Reference, Garrett Cole 77. So where do they have him? They have him at 79 and 77. So the computers are very close in the simulated strikeouts. That's kind of insane. Max Scherzer's leading the way with 80. He's the only one ahead of Cole at 77. Verlander 73 and Buehler at 69. That wraps it up for the simulated conversation here. Nothing crazy happening this past week in the simulations. Nobody really making a run. Not a ton of changes at the top of the standings or the statistics, but we'll continue to keep you guys updated. Like we said, there's no real baseball to actually talk about and discuss, so we're going to talk about the simulations. We're going to talk about the Korean League. We're going to give you guys baseball content, even though it may not specifically be Major League Baseball. But that wraps it up for this segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. As always, hang with us. It's our 6th and final segment coming up. It's a good one. You guys are going to be entertained. No spoilers. Hang around.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello and welcome back to the 6th and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Thursday, May 7th, episode number 186 of the Baseball Podcast. Since you've made it this far, I have to ask you one last time, if you haven't done so already, write us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us a rating. Head to Facebook. Follow our Facebook page. I'll post recent articles talking about stuff that we'll be discussing on upcoming episodes, so you can stay in the loop, be first to get information, as well as Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you up to date with all the baseball news that you guys need to know out there. You, the listeners, I appreciate what you're doing here. So this is the 6th and final segment. We like to have a little bit of fun at this point during the show. Last episode, it was recorded Sunday night following the Last Dance documentary talking about Michael Jordan. So we discussed Michael's baseball career in Double-A for the Chicago White Sox organization. And, things weren't great for Michael. So I was trying to come up with a conversation to have here in this segment today. And I'm watching, bear with me here, stay with me. I'm watching The Masked Singer on Fox. All right, I got a 2-year-old daughter who loves, all the costumes, all the music, loves dancing, the turtle, the frog, the banana. She loved it all, loves watching the show, so we put it on every week. And the Rhino is a current contestant who, based on the clues and everything they give and the voice, that I, as well as some of you listeners out there, based on what I'm seeing on the Twitter sphere, have determined that the Rhino is in fact Barry Zito. That's right, the same Barry Zito who was on the 2012 San Francisco Giants. He's up there crushing it, and he's singing well. He's made it to the top 4. They started out with, I think, 10 or 12 And Rob Gronkowski has been unmasked already. Everybody knows that now that they're going to Tampa Bay down with Tom Brady and down in Florida. He was the White Tiger early in previous seasons. We had Victor Oladipo. That man can sing, if you didn't know that. Victor Oladipo, the NBA All-Star out of Indiana for the Pacers. He can belt a tune. Well, this time it seems like we're getting ourselves baseball finally involved, and Barry Zito as the Rhino. Now, he hasn't been unmasked yet, so we could be wrong. But looking at the clues and looking at everything like that, 95% sure we're about to see Barry Zito be unmasked here in the near future within the next week or two. But that got me thinking, okay, if Barry Zito is doing the Masked Singer, what are other hobbies for Major League Baseball players, or what are other talents that some of the guys are known for, since Barry's singing as well as playing baseball? Well, the musician gig came up, more than once, doing some research into some other individuals who have some experience outside of baseball. And a few musicians. One was Bronson Arroyo. You guys remember Bronson. He had that high, funky leg kick. Threw for quite a few different teams. I tend to remember him first in a Cincinnati Reds uniform, playing on some of those playoff teams in the 2010-11 year when they beat the Phillies as well. I think he threw for the Braves, too, after that. So here in Philadelphia, we saw quite a bit of Bronson Arroyo, as well as Jake Peavy. You remember Jake Peavy? I remember him for the Padres. Shorter, smaller guy, but really threw. Loved watching him pitch. Had a heck of an attitude, heck of a heart. Then he got traded, I think, to the White Sox. Ultimately didn't perform as well and kind of fizzled out on the tail end of his career. But at the top pinnacle of his talents, a tremendous, tremendous arm and a lot of fun to watch. Well, he's a musician. And then locally, Brett Myers, 2009, he started Game 2. 2008 started Game 2, World Series champs. He's done some country music. So there seems to be a theme there in regards to pitchers and then country music. Arroyo, Peavy, Myers, now Zito. A lot of them are following the same mold. But they weren't the only ones. So Hanley Ramirez. Hanley was a heck of a chef, apparently. Him and his wife wrote a few cooking books, used some old recipes, I believe, from the family. He knows his way around the kitchen. Read some articles about how, detailed and experienced he is as a chef and quality dishes out of his recipe book. So shout out to Hanley. Then you had guys like C.J. Wilson, the starter for the Texas Rangers. Got a big contract out in L.A. to throw for the Angels. Didn't really work out, never really lived up to the money, but CJ likes to race in the off season and cars, go-karts. What's in between there? It's not full-fledged cars, but he's into racing, enjoys doing a lot of that stuff. Brandon Phillips, second baseman, again, pops up for the Reds for me. His hobby or his talent is apparently bowling. Apparently Brandon Phillips is a very good bowler, averages well over 200, has bowled multiple perfect games in his career. I got to be honest with you. Bowling is one thing that I never really have been able to figure out. Now, I will say I've never once had a lesson or been taught how to bowl. Everybody in my family throws the thing straight. At least I spin it just a little bit. But I by no means have that nice, fancy, wind-up follow-through that you're seeing there on the PBA and ESPN and those guys knocking all those pins. I tend to end up just trying to throw the dang thing as hard as I can by the third game through. The last couple of frames, have some fun. But, I feel like bowling 250, 260, something like that, going like 7 for 10 on strikes. I think that could be a lot of fun. So if any of the listeners out there, if you guys are professional bowlers on the side, feel free to shoot me like a YouTube demo. Get me involved. We can have some fun there. But continuing around the list, Michael Kadire. I don't think he's playing anymore, but people know that name. I remember him from the Twins. He's a magician. He's got a little bit of John Dorenbos in him. John was the long snapper for the Eagles. He was traded. They found out through a physical he had some heart issues. He wasn't able to play football anymore. then went on America's Got Talent. I think he won. No, he finished second or third. I don't think he won, but got very, very far. An extremely talented individual. Well, Michael Kadire apparently was like that with cards. You know, in the clubhouse, in the dugout, rain delays. He liked to have some fun every now and then with camera crews, some random people. You know, the old pick a card, any card. Is this your card routine? He was very good at that. If you do some research and look at that, and he's probably having some fun now that he's retired, even still. A timeless act there. Another talent or a hobby is Madison Bumgarner. We found out this past offseason that he was participating in rodeos during the offseason under a false name and false identity, and something he's been doing since he was a kid. And even though he just got paid $100 million, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years with the Diamondbacks, he was still going to the rodeo, wrangling in the steer, wrangling in the calves, getting them down, roping them up. It's just in his blood. Grew up out on the farm, was a rancher as well. There's a couple of ranchers, Carlos Lee, El Caballo, who I remember. He's apparently a rancher, selling cattle, calves, things like that. There's a few horse breeders on the list. I didn't write his name down, but he's on here as well. But the last guy I had was Clayton Kershaw. Apparently Clayton Kershaw and his wife wrote a book called Arise, I believe it was, that did quite well and has positive reviews on Amazon. So just wanted to bring light to some ball players and some of their other talents or, hobbies that they have outside of baseball, some things you guys may not have known. Like I didn't really know Hanley Ramirez was a great chef. I didn't know Brandon Phillips averaged bowling like 220 or 250 or whatever it was. And I also didn't know Barry Zito could sing like the Rhino on The Masked Singer. But we're going to find out in a week or two that he's actually in the top 4, and my man can sing a little bit. But, yeah, that's what stirred up the old noggin here to come up with the last and final segment for you guys to discuss, have a little bit of fun, try to keep it light here as we transition into the month of May and week 7 or so of the quarantine. All the days are running together. Bill Murray and Groundhog's Day, that's on Netflix. I popped that one on, watched it again, and it just, it makes more and more sense by the day. Wake up the same time, similar song and dance throughout the workday. Try to mix it up when the weather's nice, get outside. Well, that's what I tried to do here today in this 6th segment. Just mix it up, try to keep the feet loose. Hopefully you guys are still listening and haven't tuned out here quite yet. But that wraps up today's episode number 186 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Once again, I just want to thank everybody out there who's listening. We had the numbers come in for April. They were very, very good, up from the month of January. So I know me asking you guys to spread the love on social media, spread the love on Facebook, continue to share us with your friends. Let us know what we can do here to continue to bring you guys quality content, bring you guys stuff you want to listen to. Continue to give us the feedback. Continue to give us 5-star ratings, all of that stuff. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and, I appreciate you guys listening. As always, if you guys know any nurses or any healthcare workers on the front line, shoot them an extra thank you this week as they continue to fight the battle for all of us. But once again, that's it. That wraps it up. Episode 186. I am Kevin Mahalik, your host of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. We'll talk to you guys this Monday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.